Hi, and welcome to this 20-minute beginners Pilates workout. We'll start with some gentle mobilization and some hip rolls, peeling the spine away from the mat one vertebra at a time, keeping the weight equal through the feet. Try not to let the knees drift apart, and then slowly placing one vertebra at a time back down onto the mat, bringing the pelvis back to its neutral position. And then you're inhaling to hold, and on the exhalation, you're drawing up the pelvic floor, you're pulling the belly button towards the spine, and then once again, peeling the spine away from the mat one vertebra at a time. Inhale to hold at the top, and then slowly lower the spine back down onto the mat, making sure you start in a neutral pelvic position. Abdominal muscles engage first, and then lower back, mid back lifts off the mat. Inhale to hold at the top, and then exhale, mid back, lower back, pelvis, tailbone back down onto the mat, returning the spine to that start position. And again, make sure the abdominal muscles engage first before the glutes and the hamstrings engaged to lift the pelvis off the mat, and then sequentially lower the spine back down one vertebra at a time. Inhale to stay, and then exhale, tailbone, pelvis, lower back, mid back lifts off the mat. Try not to overarch. Inhale to hold at the top, and then exhale, slowly place one vertebra at a time back down to that start position. And one last time, hopefully feeling that you've got a little bit more mobility, a little more flexibility as you lift tailbone, pelvis, lower back, mid back off the mat. Inhaling to hold, exhale, sequentially place one vertebra at a time back down to that start position. Checking that the pelvis is in its neutral position, hip bones, pubic bone in the same level plane, before we give them some alternate heel lifts. So on the exhalation, belly button pulls in, lift one foot off the mat. Inhale to hold, exhale, lift the second foot off the mat. Inhale again, exhale, float the first foot back down. Inhale to hold, exhale, float the second foot back down. So inhale to stay, exhale, 1 foot lifts, belly buttons pulled in. Inhale to hold, exhale, lift the second foot. Inhale again, exhale, lower the first foot back down onto the mat. Inhale to hold, exhale, lower the second foot back down. 2 more of these, making sure when we lift the second foot off the mat, we keep the shoulders, the neck relaxed. Don't want to let the lower back arch. We want to make sure the belly button stays pulled in towards the spine, rib cage doesn't lift, pelvis stays in its neutral position. Making sure when you breathe in, it's into the sides and the back of the rib cage, not the shoulders and the neck. Maintaining that stability through the center. Ready to place 1 foot down. Inhale to hold. Exhale, second foot back down. Now we're taking the arms wide. We're going to bring them in line with the shoulders, ready to think about mobilizing lower mid back. So on the next exhalation, take the knees over to one side. Inhale to hold, and then exhale, bring those knees back to center. Inhale to stay. Exhale, gently. Knees over to the other side, keeping the shoulders relaxed. Shoulder blades in contact with the mat. Inhale to hold. Exhale, knees come back to center. And again, be in control of that movement. Don't let the knees flop towards the floor. Bringing the knees back to center. Again, control. Knees go over to one side. Turn the head in the opposite direction. Get that full rotation from the tailbone to the crown of the head, bringing those knees back to center. Shoulders relaxed. Then we're thinking about floating 1 foot off the mat. Inhale to hold, exhale, lift the second foot. And then keeping that control, keeping that stability on the exhalation, belly button pulls in, knees over to one side. Inhale to hold, exhale, knees back to center. Inhale to stay, exhale, knees over to the other side. Inhale to hold, exhale, bring those knees back to center. So keeping the rib cage down, belly button pulled in control of that rotation. Inhale when the knees are over to the side. Exhale, bring them back to center. Inhale to hold. Exhale, knees over to the other side. Again, shoulder blades in contact with the mat. Try and keep that 90 degrees at the hip, 90 degrees at the knee. Floating those feet back down onto the mat. And then we're going to think about some ab prep. So we're going to lift head and shoulders off the mat, sliding the ribs towards hips. So arms are down by the sides of the body. Inhale, chin tucks in, and then exhale, belly button pulls in, rib cage slides down, eye line looks just above the knees at the top, back sides relaxed, nice wide open position across the collarbones. Inhale to hold, and then exhale, slowly lower. Shoulders head back down onto the mat. Inhale, chin tucks in. Exhale, arms lift off the mat. Fingertips reach towards the ankles. Inhale to hold at the top. Exhale, lower shoulders head back down. Chin tucks in. Rib cage slides down. Back sides relax. Natural curve through the lower back. Inhale to hold at the top. Exhale, lower back down. Floating the legs to tabletops. Inhale, 1 foot lifts. Exhale, belly button pulls in. Second foot lifts. Inhale, chin tucks in. Exhale, head and shoulders lifts. Rib cage slides down, keeping that natural curve through the lower back. Inhale to hold at the top. Exhale, slowly lower shoulders, head back down. And again, inhale, chin tucks in. Exhale, energy through the fingertips. Nice wide open position across the collarbones. Inhale to hold. Exhale, lower shoulders, head back down. And again, inhale, chin tucks in. Exhale, rib cage slides down. Inhale to hold. Exhale, lower shoulders, head back down. Making sure you're keeping the belly button pulled in, maintaining that connection with the deep abdominal muscles, keeping that stability through the center, natural curve through the lower back, pelvis neutral. And then we're going to float the feet back down onto the mats. Inhale, lower 1 foot. Exhale, lower the second foot. And then we're going to think about variation on that ab prep. So we're bringing the hands behind the head. Thumbs rest on the base of the skull, fingertips rest lightly on the back of the head. Again, thinking about sliding the ribs down towards hips. Inhale, chin tucks in. Exhale, belly button pulls in. Rib cage slides down. Egg underneath the chin. You don't want to crack. Eye line looks just above the knees. Inhale to hold. Exhale, lower shoulders, head back down. And again, inhale, chin tucks in. Exhale, rib cage slides down. All the works with the upper abdominal muscles. Inhale there. Exhale, lower shoulders, head back down. Last time before we add in some leg movement. So we're making sure we're not bringing the head forwards when we lift head and shoulders off the mat. So you're going to inhale, lift 1 foot, chin tucks in. Exhale, head and shoulders lift, rib cage slides down, leg lengthens. Inhale, bring the leg back to tabletop. Exhale, lower foot, shoulders head back down onto the mat. Inhale, second foot lifts. Exhale, lift head and shoulders, leg lengthens. Inhale, bring the leg back. Exhale, lower shoulders head back down. And again, chin tucks in, relax the head in the hands, leg lifts, exhale, leg lengthens. As we lift head and shoulders, inhale, bring that leg back, exhale, lower shoulders, head back down. And again, chin tucks in, relax the head and the hands, don't pull with the arms and the shoulders. Rib cage slides down. There's that wood pigeon again, flying through the screen. And again, inhale, chin tucks in, exhale, foot lifts, exhale. Leg lengthens, rib cage slides down. Keeping the elbows in the corners of the eyes, making sure we're not dragging the head forwards on the neck. Head's relaxed in the hands as we slide the rib cage down. We're moving the leg, lowering shoulders, head back down onto the mat. And then resting head and shoulders on the mat, hugging the knees into the chest, shoulders relaxed, gently turning the head side to side. And release the neck after we've just lifted the head and shoulders off the mat. Gently turning the head one way, bring it back to center, gently turn the head the other way, floating the feet back down onto the mat. And then we're going to think about adding some rotation to that head and shoulders lifting off the mat. Making sure we've got ankles, knees, hips aligned, pelvis neutral, hands behind the head, relaxing the head in the hands. Inhale, chin tucks in. Exhale, lift rib up and over to opposite hip. Eye line looks down the side of the leg at the top. Inhale, lower shoulders, head back down. Exhale, chin tucks in, rib to the other hip. This time, keeping the knees level, hip bones pointing straight up, lowering shoulders, head back down. So we've got that rotation, rib to opposite hip, and we've got that flexion, lifting head and shoulders. Still think when head and shoulders on the mat, we keep that small engagement with those deep abdominal muscles, not releasing the rib cage, not releasing the abdominal muscles, trying not to jam the chin to the chest. Lift, rotate. Inhale, lower shoulders, head back down. Exhale, chin tucks in. Lift, rotate, rib to opposite hip. Inhale, shoulders, head back down. So if you wish, you can keep one elbow on the mat, pivot on that elbow. Try not to drag the other elbow forwards. Keep it in the corners of the eyes. Floating the legs to tabletop. Keeping that natural curve through the lower back. Keeping the knees level. Inhale, chin tucks in. Exhale, rib up and over to opposite hip. Eye line still looks down the side of the leg at the top. Inhale, lower shoulders, head back down. Exhale, up and over. Other side. Making sure you're not pulling with the arms. not pulling with the hands. And if you wish, you're comfortable there with the legs at tabletop, you can straighten one leg at a time as you lift and rotate, keeping that pelvic stability. So don't let the hips be pulled away with the leg. Don't let the pelvis tilt side to side as you lift and rotate, maintaining that stability, that strength through the center, whilst building on that movement, that range, that flexibility, that stability, that mobility. One more to each side, keeping the head relaxed in the hands. And then floating the feet back down onto the mat, head and shoulders relaxed. Okay, just sorting myself out there, making sure my t-shirt sleeves are in the right position. Don't forget the peak cap. And then we're just going to check our alignment, making sure the hips and ribs in the right position. And we're going to float one leg to tabletop. We're going to think about some one leg circles. So you can stay with the second leg bent or that second leg straight. And then we're thinking about pencil on the top of that kneecap. Going to turn top of the thigh bone in the hip socket. Inhale for the first half of the circle. Exhale for the second half of the circle, maintaining that pelvic stability, keeping that strength through the hips and the ribs. Say hello to the wood pigeon again as it just flown through. And then next time that leg's back in its start position, you're going to change direction. Inhale for the first half of the circle. Exhale for the second half of the circle. So just top of the thigh bone in the hip socket, maintaining that stability through the center. Shoulders, neck relaxed, rib cage sliding down. Pelvis stays neutral. And then the next time the leg's back in that start position, float the foot back down onto the mat. Setting yourselves up on the other leg, however you were on the first leg. And then inhale for the first half of the circle, bringing the knee towards the center line. Exhale, taking that leg away from the body. Shoulders relaxed. Hips and ribs stay in the same position. Just want top of the thigh bone to move in the hip socket, keeping that stability through the center. Inhale for the first half of the circle. Exhale for the second half of the circle. Next time the leg's back in its start position, change direction. Inhale, take the knee away from the body. Exhale, bring it back towards the other leg. Circling, creating some mobility, some strength through that hip socket whilst maintaining the stability and strength through the center in between the ribs and the hips. Last time. And then floating that foot back down onto the mat, sliding the other leg back up, feet flat on the floor, knees bent, ankles, knees, hips aligned, pelvis stays neutral. So let's break an exercise down. We're going to add in some arm circles to begin with. So making sure the rib cage stays down, shoulders relax. You can inhale, float the fingertips up and back, and then exhale, circle the arms all the way back down by the sides of the body. And again, inhale, keeping the rib cage sliding down, shoulders relax, fingertips float up and back. Exhale, float the arms back down. And again, inhale, fingertips float up. Exhale, circle the arms wide. And then we're going to think about circling the arms with the head and shoulders lifted off the mat. Inhale, chin tucks in. Exhale, head and shoulders lift, keeping the rib cage sliding down. Eye line looks just above the knees. Inhale, float the fingertips up and back, keeping the head and shoulders off the mat. Exhale, circle the arms wide. And again, rib cage slides down. Inhale, float the fingertips up and back. Keep the eye line looking just above the knees as you circle the arms. Don't let the weight of the arms as they go back and over the head drag the shoulders back down onto the mat. And again, inhale, float the fingertips up. Rib cage slides down. Eye line looks just above the knees. Exhale, circle the arms wide. Last one. Brilliant. And then we're going to float shoulders, head back down onto the mat. We're going to think about some movement with the legs, keeping the pelvis neutral. So you're going to inhale, float one foot off the mat. Exhale, float the second foot off the mat, making sure we've got knees together, thighs together. Going to straighten the legs long. So on the next exhalation, lengthen the legs, flex the feet, turn the toes out, squeezing the heels together. Inhale, bring the legs back to tabletop. Keep those knees squeezing, thighs squeezing, legs lengthen, toes turn out, squeeze the heels together. Inhale, bring the legs back. And again, exhale, straighten the legs long, flex the feet, turn the toes out, rib cage stays down, belly button pulls in. Inhale, bring the legs back to that start position. You're going to add in the arms and the head and shoulders lifted. So lift the head and shoulders, arms go back over the head as the legs lengthen, knees bend as the arms come back down by the sides of the body. Exhale, arms go back, legs go long. Keep squeezing the heels, knees together. Don't let the head and shoulders come back down onto the mat when the arms go back over the head. Don't let the pelvis move, belly button pop when the legs go long. 2 more. Rib cage stays sliding down, legs lengthen. Float shoulders, head back down onto the mat. Inhale, float 1 foot back down. Exhale, float the 2nd foot back down. Hugging the knees into the chest, shoulders, neck relaxed. Gently, if you wish, if it's comfortable, rock the knees side to side. Gently turn the head side to side. Taking a few moments here, breathing into the sides and the back of the rib cage. Shoulders relaxed, ready for the next, which will be some half roll-ups. So when you're ready, you're going to float those feet back down onto the mat, making sure we've got an alignment through the ankles, knees and hips. Pelvis is neutral, natural curve through the lower back. And then we're going to add in the movement of the arms again. So inhale, float the fingertips up. Exhale, float the arms back down. Inhale, float the fingertips up. Chin tucks in. Exhale, ribs slide down towards the hips. Eye line looks just above the knees at the top. Back sides relax, natural curve through the lower back. Inhale here. Exhale, lower shoulders, head back down onto the mat. Arms go back over the head. Inhale, fingertips float up. Chin tucks in. Exhale, rib cage dies down. Nice wide open position across the collarbones. Inhale at the top. Exhale, lower shoulders, head back down. So you're thinking about upper abdominal muscles, lifting head and shoulders off of the mat, egg underneath the chin you don't want to crack. Inhale to hold at the top. Exhale, lower shoulders, head back down. So energy through the fingertips, shoulders away from the ears. Back sides relaxed, belly buttons pulled in, maintaining that strength and stability through the center. And again, inhale, float the fingertips up. Exhale, chin tucks in, ribs to hips. Inhale to hold at the top. And then exhale, lower shoulders, head back down onto the mat. And then floating the arms back down by the sides of the body. Getting that alignment through the ankles, knees, and hips. Going to think about some roll over prep. So we're floating the legs to tabletop. Inhale, lift 1 foot. Exhale, lift the 2nd foot. Cross the feet, the ankles. Try not to hook the feet. Knees are wide. Going to think about hips coming a little bit closer towards the rib cage. So we're tilting the pelvis. Inhale, bring it back to that start position. So exhale, hips to ribs. Shoulders relax, tilting the pelvis. If you can, start to think about lifting the tailbone and the pelvis off the mat. Knees are going up rather than in towards the shoulders. Hips to ribs, lifting. Up, up, up. Shoulders relax. Try not to use the arms. Use the lower abdominal muscles. Next time the pelvis is neutral, uncross the feet. Cross them the other way. Knees are as wide as possible. Pelvis tilts. You can start to lift the lower back off the mat. Try not to let the shoulders tense too much. Try not to let the head lift off the mat. 2 more. Hips to ribs. Last one. Knees are going up rather than in. And then the next time the pelvis is on the mat, uncross the feet, hug the knees into the chest. Gently turn the head on the mat, keeping the shoulders relaxed. Taking a few breaths here, and then floating the feet back down onto the mat. And when you're ready, roll yourselves over onto one side. Thank you very much for that 20 minutes beginners Pilates workout. See you next time.